Hey folks, before we dive into the episode, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown of what we're doing here. This is called the Friendship Series, where we sit down and we interview all of our friends or just people we know. Dive in deep and get great stories out of them. It's always a good way to sit down and understand that everybody lives a complex life just like we do. This episode was recorded a couple of weeks ago, so there are some topics that are a little bit older in the news. But remember, we're not experts. We're not a news source. We're just giving opinions. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Yeah, I if the video does get out there, you guys are going to see Jeffrey's fantastic bod, and you're missing out if you don't get this video out there. So we have,
because Jeff's shirt is off and it looks great.
He's looking great. Top notch over there.
Learning what we can, stick it to the man. Oh, I am blockhead. A blockhead, yes I am.
Beautiful. Get this going. Well, first and foremost, this is episode 9 with Jeff Burrows, a friend, a scholar, a Dalton native. Are you from Dalton, Jeff?
Not originally, but that's where I grew up.
All right, that's still applicable then. Where are you from originally? Let's get right into this thing.
Yeah, so I was born in a small town called Ypsilanti, Michigan. It's the neighbor of Ann Arbor, where the University of Michigan is.
Ypsilanti.
I didn't even know you. So he's like Pat. He's from Michigan.
Yeah, dude. They got some.
Originally. I didn't grow up there. No, it'll always have a place. It'll always be a part of me.
Raised in the Berks. Raised in the Central Berkshire Regional School District. And Jeffrey, I'll let you get into your upbringing, but I just want to say that Jeff's one of my best friends. We have gotten into a lot of trouble together, and we've had a lot of success together. But just having his influence on me has helped shape me in ways, and I'm sure I've helped shape him. But we're going to talk about all that. And just to preface, we have experienced an assassination attempt on former President Trump this past weekend. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, which is a little nuts.
We got to talk about it, dude, because I got more information on that too.
Okay, so we're gonna go over ins and outs and what we know, and we're not fucking experts, and we're not politically affiliated. We have our opinions, but at the same time, we're not trying to sway the audience anyway. So we'll get into all that in this episode. Fucking Kyle is late per usual. If he pops on, lovely. If he doesn't, then we will see him soon. All right.
It's insane.
We moved up the episode so that he could be on this episode, and the guy's late.
He's working overtime. God bless his soul. Right. Yeah. So he's working late. He's working hard. Trying to do the right thing. So we're this time we'll give him a little bit of a pass, but we're still going to give him shit. And even if he didn't work overtime, he'd probably still be late. So
yeah, he's probably not. He's not. I don't think he's working overtime. He said he was working overtime on Thursday, and we had to move it to Tuesday because he was fucking working overtime on Thursday. Fucking guy. Anyways,
I don't know. Yeah.
Anyways, we'll be sure to throw in multiple Kyle digs throughout this episode as well, because I thoroughly enjoy it, and I know the listeners do. So
it's a great pastime.
Jeffrey.
It is fun. So, all right. Anyway, Jeff, so you're the original Michigan Mamba. It's actually not Pat. It's you. So we have to clarify that for the record, get the record straight. When did you move to Dalton? Like, were you just like a little baby, a little wee one?
Yeah. So I would say I moved to Dalton when I was about 4. I think we moved to Great Barrington initially, somewhere in South County for like initial year, coming from Michigan around 3, me and my father. And, he was a young father, like 28 years old at the time. And me and him just moved to a different part of the country away from all our family. And he's an engineer, so he worked a lot, and we kind of just made things work and took things on together. And certainly we're growing together, especially looking back now, being a parent. You can only imagine what it was like being that age and having all that responsibility with not much help or support around. It probably was quite nerve-wracking, on top of I could be challenging still today, let alone when I was in my younger years.
Oh yeah. So what was it like growing up in Dalton? I mean, like, obviously, when did you kind of bump into Kyle and Rudy? Like, at what point? Like, was it football? Like, how did you guys kind of meet, if you can remember?
For Kyle, it was in the town of Dalton. He grew up there. Rudy was there as well, but I think he started off in the Beckett kind of elementary school. So I didn't really have much interaction with Rudy until later on. I'd say middle school, where they kind of pulled the schools in together. But Kyle,
the rich kids went to Beckett.
Yeah. No, hold on. I want to clarify. So
that's where the rich kids went. It was Beckett.
No.
That's
so
I'm kidding.
I grew up in the hill towns throughout elementary school. Moved down to Dalton in 5th grade as my parents were splitting, and we lived almost, just across the street from Jeff, actually, for a period. And we caught the bus together, and Jeff was a big bully back then. And I had to tell on him a couple times to my mom, and she said, just don't go around that kid. And then, fast forward three years later, Jeff's like my best friend. We're partying together in high school. And, like I said earlier, just getting into a little bit of trouble, but also just having a bunch of fun. Why
did you have to tell on him?
Because I was.
Did he beat you up in the bus or something?
Well,
give you a nookie?
Well, from a vulnerability standpoint, I was the new kid. I was, a little chunky. I was a little, self-conscious, just trying to find where I fit in that new space that I was in. So
don't overlook that haircut you had either. That was a part of it.
I had a top-notch bowl cut.
The bowl cut, dude. Yeah, it's
bangs
very.
Down
I
to
had
just
one too.
the eyebrows. So, yeah, trying to find my way, and Jeff, rightfully so, probably said that haircut sucks, bro. And we got into it a bit, but in the end,
so Jeff doesn't really remember, but it's a core memory for you, Rudy, that basically the first time you met Jeff, he's like, you're fat and your fucking haircut sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit next to you on the bus. Yeah. Okay. That's.
Yeah. I would say that awesome. Certainly wasn't true. I find later on, looking back, that often he'd be projecting the complete opposite of probably how I was feeling. So I think it makes sense that we ended up coming together within a few years of being around each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, I mean, I don't know what, what happened when you guys started hanging out and partying? Because I mean, that's just a great time of life. I feel like the music from that time period of your life sticks out the most. Like they say that's your favorite music is kind of cultivated during that time of your life. Like, what did you guys listen to? I know you had parties up at your grandfather's property. Like, what did that friendship kind of turn into? Like, those are awesome years.
You want to say, because when I think of high school, I think of football, and I think of Joe Ye and Keith Lesevich and us bumping Big Pun and on our way to practices. Think of Friday night lights and the pasta parties that Coach Mo used to have. I think of doubles. I think of, and from a partying perspective, I think of, Hinsdale, Jeff, I think you might have gone up there quite a few times. Jeff actually got in, and I'll let you talk about it, Jeff, but he started going up North County quite a bit in those years, right?
Yeah, initially after kind of graduating high school and and leave in the military, I guess it was probably towards the end maybe of my high school. Met a girl, of course, that's usually how that starts, and started spending more time in an unfamiliar place. And it opened up a whole nother world of such, I guess, of people and places to be familiar with. And, you know, I became the go-to, I guess, person that and then knew a little bit about the North County to kind of direct people where to go and kind of open up some new doors.
Yeah. Jeff was
that's when, I mean, at some point I remember, Jeff coming out and then hanging out with those guys, like hanging out with Pickard and Jaron and all those guys. Cause Pickard lived down the street from me near the hospital. His mom had that two family. You remember that in the big backyard? And they do like the wiffle ball games and stuff. And that was the first time that I remember bumping into Burrows. And I knew he knew like Tyler and those guys as well. So just kind of funny. So we didn't interact a whole lot, but I definitely knew who he was, and everyone kind of like, he was the kid that was, you know, willing to come from South County, you know what I mean? And like hang out. So just like everyone kind of idolized him. It was weird, but it's just funny how different things were. You know, if you were like, we had our rival with Adams, but then it was like the kids from Pittsfield or like in Dalton were always kind of cool. And the fact that he would kind of make the trip, it seemed like everyone kind of idolized him a little bit, at least from my perspective.
Well, so if, you know, Steve will do it, you know, that viral kid that chugs and what, you know,
does crazy stuff. Yeah. He's part of like the Nelk Boys, isn't he?
Yeah. He's part of Nelk, right? Jeff will do it. Burrows will do it. Was, you know, sort of the aura that he carried wherever he went. And, you know, it served him well. You know, I loved it. I love it. And I think we've all matured to maybe know when the limit's the limit, but you know, you get a couple spritzers in us and you know, we might do it. We'll have to see when we're back in each other's company. Last time Jeff came up, we went out to Tunnel Bar, and that was a fun time.
A couple delicious beverages.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I don't want to sidebar too much, but I got hammered yesterday.
Yeah.
Today was awful. Just like miserable anxiety, just like it was like the ultimate self-sabotage, really. You know what I mean? Like when I feel like a lot of things are going good, and it's like alcohol is such a detractor. But at the same time, like it can be a great time, like you said, like you get with friends, you have a few beers, like after the podcast or whatever. Like there's definitely a time and a place where it can be a great tool to really have good conversations and open up. And if you drink responsibly, you know, like they say in the commercials, you actually don't feel like freaking shit the next day. But I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of guy. And, you know, pretty much drank all day yesterday, golfed, and then went out until late at night in Boston. And I mean, the anxiety-ridden, self-hatred, awful just demonization of my own character that I've been going through all day has been amazing. Yeah. It's weird what alcohol can do to you. And it seems like from golfing bad to having a bad attitude about golf to continuing to drink for the rest of the day, it's one of those things where I feel like men in general have the, like this perplexity or this thing where they will self-sabotage when they're at a really good point, almost like imposter syndrome. And that's kind of what I feel like, and the guilt that I have today about that, because I feel like I'm at an inflection point, but that was like a step in the wrong direction. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, I think so. And Jeff was talking about this earlier, you know, when you've reached maybe the top, or you've reached a place where, you know, you want it, or you maybe weren't expecting to be, and you're trying to either overcome that or exceed that or back out of it. It's almost like a trap, right? And I would love Jeff to bring up that metaphor that you brought up earlier on what was it? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it was. I saw some quick reel, and it was talking about growth, and it used the metaphor of a Chinese finger trap. I don't know if that's the correct name for it, and maybe even not be politically correct. But anyways, it's the little trap you get at the arcade. You put your finger in there. It's a little woven, object, and you go to pull them apart, and you can't get it apart. But when you push them together, it releases and allows you to get out of there. And he was comparing it to, an experience where, sometimes when you deal with something that's uncomfortable or, challenges you in a way that you weren't expecting, often you could have a reaction of resisting or avoiding, pulling away. And that in itself often can make, your experience maybe with anxiety or depression around this challenge even worse, where it feels more constricting. But if you actually lean into that experience that's uncomfortable or challenging, and you relax and you kind of take time to be with yourself a little bit, it can get a lot easier. And I think often, it was a metaphor that was very easy to imagine. A lot of us have seen this contraption before. But I also think a lot of us have experienced maybe at least once where we chose to lean in and kind of relax a little bit, and how things kind of seem to be a little bit easier than other alternative experiences.
Yeah, or resisting.
I love that, Jeff.
Yeah, isn't that great?
It's really good. It's really good. I think that's good to remember.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if it fully encapsulates what you're feeling, because it's good to loosen up sometimes, right? But also,
so sometimes you need to give alcohol doesn't need to be involved, right? But it's good to give yourself a reprieve and a reset, and like just let loose sometimes. And one of the coolest ways that we enjoy to do is just, what we're used to and what we grew up doing, and what we were kind of hinting at earlier is like just getting it after it with your boys. Like guys, women don't understand it, but guys fucking love it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And there, like I said, there's something to be said about that. But yeah, it was a little too much. But I see what you're saying, Jeff, is that like leaning into it. And one thing that I'm at least proud of myself, and it's taken away some of the anxiety of the whole thing, is that at least I'm aware of it. I would just do that before, like recklessly. But I think through this podcast and through being more introspective and the things that we talk about and really trying to become a better person and get to that next level of life and maturity, knowing exactly kind of what's going on and being able to somewhat pinpoint it and know at least it's not the right thing, maybe not knowing exactly where that, self-sabotage or that behavior is coming from, but the fact that I can identify it and I know what's going on even when I'm doing it is definitely a step in the right direction. So I think that leaning into the things that, instead of pulling away I think that escape was me pulling away and really tightening the trap. And then, today was just basically a wash because I couldn't be as productive as I wanted to. My performance at the gym was, subpar at best. So, but to give myself credit, and this podcast and this journey, I think that it's given me the ability to be aware and kind of put my finger on what's going on and why that behavior happens, at certain inflection points in life.
Yeah.
Mine in particular. So.
Love it. And
awareness is key there.
This is,
it's like,
this is sort of, this is in line with, the core values that we try to preach to, and the, the work ethic bit and just the vulnerability bit of knowing yourself and consideration too, right? All of these things are interwoven in our awareness of ourselves. And if we see where we're lacking, we can maybe right the ship when we know or rather than right the ship, ease up on the trap, try to, embrace that discomfort, as our friend Jeff Moulton says, and just get through it, or remain sober, even though it might be uncomfortable during, an attorney or something, right? Because we all want to let loose. But I'm going to try that coming up in August. Try to stay sober at that Unico tourney. And Donny, I got to talk to you about that because I think we need a fourth. So
what for golf?
Yeah.
Or for basketball?
No, for golf.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
The Unico tournament at Berkshire Hills. I'll get you a date.
Definitely let me know, because I want to play at Berkshire Hills. I've never played there before. Me and my uncle were actually, dude, it's so awesome. My uncle, it's like he's in his 60s, my Uncle Paul, and like he calls me and we just talk about golf. Like he called me today. We talked for like an hour and we talked about golf. You know what I mean? And then of course we talked about the crazy assassination attempt. But it's just cool to see him even at that age lean into it. And he's a pretty good athlete. He was a really good basketball player, and he's leaned into it and he's really got a lot better. And I feel like even seeing him and how much he's grown and he's matured, even in his later years, like where he would be very stubborn, before that, and now to see him lean into golf, it's really been incredible. But I don't want, without getting too sidebar though, like looking at kind of like what I just said about the whole drinking thing and the self-sabotage and kind of leaning into that stuff. And I think that like, even though what we do is still on a small scale, Rudy, I think that there's something to be said about putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, because we are taking on more responsibility. And I feel an intrinsic responsibility more so than before because I'm putting myself out there for the world to see, right? So I feel like by doing that, I have to take on more responsibility. So it is a little bit more nerve-wracking. But when I know I go off and I fuck off or I do something that's kind of against the principles that we're trying to put out there and teach because it's changed our lives so much, you know, I think that there's a certain amount of guilt associated with that because we are in a position. And I feel like if you start a business or you have employees or you do something like the podcast, you're taking on more responsibility. And that's when you've gone through a great deal of your life avoiding responsibility, it gets a little tough and it's a little bit to deal with. And like I said, I think there's been moments where I've done a little self-sabotage because I feel like it's a little unnerving sometimes taking on that additional responsibility, but it's something that I'm welcoming. And I really am looking forward to taking on that responsibility. I'm willing to take on that burden for other people because I want to help people. And one other thing I want to say is one of my family members actually reached out and was like, hey, I've seen what you've been doing. Me and my partner want to, lose some weight, blah, blah, blah. Like we've seen what you've done in your journey. So I was able to kind of reiterate what Jeff showed me and show them. And they're trying to go on that journey and to take on that responsibility. It's worth every second to see, us actually making an impact on other people's life with our work ethic. And, we've had people reach out to us from, I think Belize, one person. I talked to this kid from Toronto. There's a girl that I went to school with that reached out and said, she loves our stuff and, it makes a difference with her. So even if it's a few people, I think it's been great to take on that responsibility. And even though it's tough at times, I fully welcome it. But anyway, Jeff's on the episode. I don't want to sit here and just ramble on too much, but I wanted to get that off my chest before I forgot about it. What are your thoughts about that kind of stuff, Jeff? Yeah, I would.
Yeah, my thought on that is I definitely see, you have a great awareness, which I think a precursor to being aware is being vulnerable. In order to be aware, you do have to kind of check yourself and your ego and your preconceptions of who you see yourself as or who you want to be, and sometimes accept or admit that you may be missing the mark or you may be not living up to the standards that you set for yourself. Which without doing that, like you can only I've experienced that my relationship with myself stopped at a point where I was unable to continue being vulnerable to unpack things to kind of deepen that relationship and therefore kind of grow as a person. So you're certainly growing as a person to have the awareness you have because that requires that vulnerability.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's really telling about people's relationship with God, right? Because you let go of the self, and that's why I feel like it's such a powerful thing for people, regardless of whether you're religious or not. But it's able to step outside and really look at yourself more introspectively and almost like that eye is watching you. And like you do have a bigger responsibility. So some people take it on with, like you said, starting a podcast or a business, but other people really dive into, whether it's Christianity or a different religion, they can really look at that and know that somebody's, watching over them. And obviously Kyle speaks to religion very eloquently because he's read a lot of the Bible and obviously is a real, believer in Jesus Christ. So it would be great having him on, but he decided, to just not even answer any text messages all day. So that's cool.
I hope he's well.
I hope he's well as well.
But yeah, so what
glitched out.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Do you guys see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Cool.
The audio is the most important anyway. So I feel as long as our audio is clean.
Yeah. Right. So I want to circle back. So we talked a little bit about Jeff and his upbringing through, we'll call high school, the growing up years,
and the formative years.
Yeah, the formative years, and then what happened after that, Jeff? Where did your life take you after that?
Oh well, I shortly after graduation, by the skin of my teeth, I left for Parris Island in South Carolina, joined the Marine Corps. Ended up doing that for about 5 years in the reserves. During that time, got deployed pretty soon after joining to Iraq, and was there for about 7 months. Was gone about 12 months total from home. Came back home, started community college at Berkshire Community College. Worked a lot while I was in the reserves, and then got ready for a second deployment just before I ended up getting separated from the military And that was kind of the end of that. Finished up my my college degree there locally, then went to business school at Eisenberg, UMass Amherst, and had some great times there. Was there for a couple years. Spent that summer in between doing an internship in China, and a lot of that, I think what got me to that point was my experiences with just adventuring outside of what my normal was. Outside of, at one point it was Dalton, and then it was outside of Central Berkshires, and then it was outside of, Massachusetts altogether, outside of the country. And then I really found that I personally valued the experience of being immersed in another culture, that I wanted to continue to pursue that kind of experience. And so that brought me to seeking out an internship abroad, where I spent a couple months in China. That more or less was kind of like more of a glorified vacation than an internship. But got to do a lot of fun stuff. Some things I don't know if I could even do today, or at least as freely as I did then, just because, the political climate everywhere is always a developing thing that, is sometimes not the same as it was before.
There's so many things to unpack there because it's such an interesting, life, right? I mean, I want to skip ahead just because I don't want to forget this question. Like, what was China like? Because I feel like there's so much, obviously they have a very rich, deep culture that goes back so much further than so many other cultures. So
recorded history, I think, is like 6,000 years.
Yeah, which is amazing, right? But then at the same time, like, it really is it's like really a dictatorship over there, and there's a lot of surveillance. And I mean, what did you feel like as a visitor? Did you feel like very welcome? Did that stuff seem apparent? Do you think it's worse now? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
No, I mean, I had previously experienced going somewhere where there was a plenty of pundits or whatever, people that had their opinion of an area that I've never traveled to, that with some experience probably can see that a lot of people that talk about places, they've never been themselves. And that seems like a very, challenging position to actually accurately describe a people, a place, or anything about it. So I was like, I'm curious to see what it's like in China. Is it like such an extreme authoritative type of place? Am I going to feel like there's max surveillance? Like kind of the things that you mentioned, I think those are pretty common narratives that you may hear here in America of China. But, not surprising, there's definitely a dash, or maybe even more than a dash, of propaganda that comes with all these descriptions of what life is like somewhere else other than where you are. The reasons why for that, I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure it's multifaceted. But anyways, my experience there was I was really impressed with the willingness for for citizens to engage in conversation about politics, about global politics. They seemed very well informed about the state of politics. And, I think a lot of them looked at, the freedoms. Like, they were inspired by other people's fight for freedoms in the past to continue their own quote unquote fight for what they want their life to look like, in the future. I didn't get a sense of feeling overly surveilled or anything. I don't know, that very well could also be an optics thing. They want foreigners to come there and have a good experience where those things maybe, if they do happen, don't happen. So therefore, it produces a better narrative. I think it encourages international tourism, but also international business, which they're certainly interested in continuing to opening up their economy to foreign investment and whatnot. So,
yeah, they have I don't know if this was there when you were there, but I heard the other day on a podcast that they rebuilt the city, or Paris, France, literally down to they have an entire city that's exact replica of Paris, France, in China. And some of these cities too, they're like ghost cities because they put so much money into infrastructure and thinking that they were building something out, and then obviously had a huge population issue with the one child policy and some of the other stuff there. And now they're kind of in this weird influx where they put billions and billions of dollars into like replicating a city, thinking it's going to be this huge tourist thing. And then I don't, like I said, and this is all hearsay. And that's why I love and respect Jeff for actually going there and immersing themselves into these cultures, because a lot of it's speculative, right? And I think a lot of it's what people and governments want us to hear. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Did you get to see anything like that over there?
No, see, and that's another thing. I guess just some basic things that I learned about China because I was traveling there. Like geographically, it's roughly the size of the United States. So it's very big. Obviously, a lot of the population is condensed to that eastern seaboard there. But even so, it's the size of the United States eastern seaboard. So it's pretty vast. I wasn't able to travel, through all the different provinces, which would be like states or whatever. So who's to say? And where I was definitely a very well built up new city. It was actually like a fishing village, maybe 60, 70 years ago. And then in the matter of 50 years, this is Shenzhen, which is in the south east, kind of similar to where Florida is, and had a similar climate. I was there in the summer. It was very, very hot. Right next to Hong Kong. Hong Kong was like a 30-minute ferry ride. And they deemed it back, 50 years ago, whatever, a special economic zone. They wanted to make kind of something maybe similar to Hong Kong that has a stock exchange, can take a lot of foreign investment, just be a city that is built for like the financial sector. And now, I mean, it's like, I think it's like 3 times the landmass of New York City, our largest city, and 4 times the population. So definitely a little more dense and in certain, but I've been in New York City. There's a lot of density population in New York City as well, especially in some areas more than others. So, there were certain areas, but it was just more or less like it was just a giant city that just would go further than you could even imagine. There was, I took a couple trips where I would travel 45 minutes or whatever, and I'd be in a completely different part of the city, but it would still the entire way be a city.
That's amazing. I mean, even when I go to New York City, and that's about the biggest city I've ever been to. And it swallows you whole. I mean, it would swallow Boston. Excuse me. I don't know what the hell just happened there with my voice. It would swallow Boston whole. I mean, it's just such the concrete jungle. I mean, and to know that there's cities in Dubai and China and around the world that would swallow New York City whole. It honestly blows my mind. It's hard.
Well, and the stress, the infrastructure in New York City is fairly old. I mean, there's not a high rise in this place that's older than 40 years old. Their subway system, all the infrastructure is like brand new. So it's just, it kind of like real quick, I was just looking at the city and I was like, man, we would like to think that we are much more advanced in a lot of ways, in all the different ways here in America than other places. But for a variety of reasons, we surely are not. I saw things there that I haven't seen in any city here in the United States. Yeah. That I was just like, wow, that's just really impressive, or that looks really nice, or that's really a constructive way to be efficient and get things done. That's just kind of like, man, like we definitely have some room for improvement.
You probably looked at it in a different light too, with your father being an engineer, right? I mean, what type of engineer was your father, or is your father still?
Yeah, he currently still is. He went to school for chemical engineering, working particularly in paper science. So that's a very niche market, but there is definitely some opportunity in Berkshire County, which is kind of how we ended up there. He had a job opportunity there for a very niche field. Yeah. But yeah, they kind of he comes up with or works on with a group of different ways to engineer specialty paper for a variety of purposes that are very specific and need certain qualities that, not everyone who makes stationery paper is necessarily going to cater to or can do.
Yeah. That's really a cool job. It's amazing when you talk to people and you see the jobs that people have. When it's still amazing, honestly. And just seeing the humanity in people. I used to sell windows and roofs, and it was like door to door, right? But the appointments would be set for me and everything like that. And the conversations you'd have with people, like candle makers, engineers, like some of the jobs you didn't even knew existed, but just like seeing the humanity in people. And then I also was thinking about this the other day, like when you actually just, especially hard for me, just shut the hell up and listen to people, they'll tell you so much about themselves. Like people really are intrinsically good. I feel like people are good, and people would always treat me well when I was at their house, offer me food and a drink. And sometimes a lot of those people no one really listened to them. Right. And to be able to sit there and just, even though I wouldn't make the sale, to just sit there and listen to this older woman or guy kind of tell a little bit about their story, who maybe is alone or doesn't have a lot of family that stops by. I think that was it was a big turning point for me to see people in that light and that humanity, just by being at people's houses trying to sell them windows or a roof. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting. So I don't want to deviate too far off the thing, but people,
I was going to say,
just asking people what they do can lead to a really cool conversation.
100%. I think that in general, there's a lot to be learned. And to Jeff's point, there's a lot to be sort of maybe you don't have to steal it, but we should be adopting some of these technologies if they have it over there, and trying to improve on things from a national perspective, because there is plenty out there. Even in Europe, although it's very old, you wouldn't think it. You wouldn't think it may the cobblestone walkways throughout Poland and Warsaw and Poznan. When Anna and I go, it's so beautiful, and they've maintained themselves for hundreds of years. Our freaking roads have craters in them after every winter. It's interesting how other nations have adopted some technologies and continued the preservation of those older or newer properties. And for some reason, I feel, frankly, we're falling behind from an infrastructure standpoint.
Absolutely.
And it's getting tighter from an economic perspective. Everybody's paying more taxes now, and
right. It's like the best time to do it was definitely 50 years ago, but it's surely best to do it. Next best time is now.
Yeah. I mean, the time is now, always, to improve. The time is now. So,
absolutely.
If any government leaders ever listen to this, we're talking to you, and we'd hope that you guys have our best interest in mind and aren't looking after your own pockets, which I know a lot of them are at this point.
Well, I think that's how we got to where we are in many respects, as far as kind of how things are situated in our society. Our reliance on exclusively, practically in many cases, personal vehicles is something that stands out across a lot of developed nations, where I would say that their infrastructure for alternatives is much better, because they, prioritize it. They assigned a value to it, where in our case, we had, lobbyists back in the 1920s, telling the safety boards of the federal government, it's not safe for pedestrians to be in the road, and really just want to make it easier for vehicles to be adopted at a higher amount into people's lives so they could dominate the market. So it's really serving their best interest in that example is why I think we started down this path of we're going all in on the American car as our way to move people.
Right. And as a result, it hasn't, we haven't been able to keep up with the maintenance as well as these other nations that maybe you could ride a bike in or have a lot of foot traffic in. Right.
And I guess a lot of places, here's the thing, prior to, I guess, that point, late 1800s, roads in America were primarily a pedestrian or horse and buggy transportation path. There wasn't, obviously vehicles, automotives at that point. And that's the case in a lot of places. I was in Vietnam, and not so much walking, but you didn't see any cars, maybe a truck or a van, smaller version here and there. But you would be 5 wide and 4 lanes of traffic in this capital city of in Hanoi of Vietnam, and everyone's got scooters. It's just I don't know. Clearly, they didn't get to the point where they all have a personal vehicle to drive around, which obviously is not necessary to move people.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. And think about the debt, though, the debt crisis that we're in again, and it's the consumer. The capitalism, we went over to China. We got everything for cheaper. It was this push for capitalism, which I am a proponent of. But then all they do is sell you the diamonds. They sell you the cars. Everyone has a $30,000 car. The average income is like $35,000. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. We don't need these luxury items to get around. Like you said, scooters, bikes. There's other ways to do it. And even infrastructure wise, I think we're totally behind. They have the bullet trains in Japan and in Europe to get, through the EU. And it just doesn't make any sense. And I think a lot of that's boils down to the consumer mentality that people have in America. And I think the architecture, it's really cool that it came up, because I know that Tucker Carlson had said this before. I've heard him say this about the architecture. There used to be beauty in Victorian homes. And when you go to Europe and you see the cobblestones, now everything's just mundane. Like a Walmart, it's like a metal building. Even the new condos that they're building near me in Waltham, it's just they're ugly. They have no character. They're just like it's like dumbing down society almost. It's really, they call it modern, but I think it's just depressing. And there's no real craftsman anymore. The materials are cheap. It looks like crap, and it's not awe-inspiring like architecture used to be. And I think that there's a huge thing lost there when we went away from that, especially as a country.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. It's probably the price of having the largest economy.
Yeah.
All right, blockheads, you know what time it is. Time to get ready and pay some bills. First up, I want to remind you of our amazing website, blockheadnation.io, where you can go get your merch. We got hats, we got beanies, we got shirts available, all for you to purchase seamlessly on our website. That's blockheadnation.io. Next up, another big thank you to GillyPuck. GillyPuck is the all-in-one hunting device for people like me who can't seem to hide from anything. Veteran-owned and operated, GillyPuck offers the perfect coverage to keep you hidden from your prey. Check out more at gillypuck.com. Hunting just got tactical. And by Jiu-Jitsu Gel. It's a specifically formulated supplement designed for martial arts. They offer 3 stages of supplements for before, during, and after. Check out more information at jujitsugel.com. And last but not least, the Tack Room in Lincoln, Massachusetts. Tack Room offers an inviting atmosphere for everyone from families, friends, date nights, and lunch meetings. Whatever the occasion, the Tack Room has something comforting for you. Check out Chef Dan Lane's creations at the Tack Room in Lincoln, Massachusetts. All right, back to it.
And one thing I was going to say too is Jeff's overall being is, in my opinion of it, is more of a rebellious type living. He wants to experience these fun things, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but he wants to experience these fun things, and he doesn't really want to do the status quo fucking ever. Okay. So if he can just be himself, that's who he is, and he'll be himself to the fullest, regardless whether you like it or not, which I love. And it's good energy to have around,
I think I've maybe adapted that earlier perspective that I definitely agree. I carried that rebellious. I feel like I try to be more constructive and find purpose in that. I would like to get it right. And I don't care, respectfully. I'm not trying to go out of my way. I try to be considerate. I think that's something I'll touch on. And, but I don't care who I have to tell, like, I disagree with you, or like, I think you're wrong because of this reason, and try to have a constructive, healthy conversation if there is some type of disagreements. But yeah, I want to get it right. And I think becoming a parent has certainly catapulted that as, I think, a driving force in just how I try to live my life, because not only am I trying to get it right for myself, but I find myself now being the primary role model for a small child who, will hopefully have, an impactful life, something that impacts them, and likely will, have impact on others. So it's a responsibility that we will share.
Circling back to responsibility, man, the more we take on, I feel like too, although it's hard and although it's uncomfortable at times, it's going to make us better. And if we can embrace that, it'll make those that look up to us better. I'll say the same. I really want to get things right. I have a big focus on reputation, and Jeff will know that that's a big focus of mine throughout my life. I want to be, viewed and respected in everything that I do, and that's not always the best thing to do it. Because if I'm deviating from my, some of my truths just to appease my reputation. I spoke with my grandfather the other day. He's 97. He's had a long, fruitful life, 10 kids. I've mentioned it in prior episodes, but he said reputation is very important, but your truth is most important, and you need to follow that. And if it doesn't pay, then find a way to, make money on the side, but always follow your truth and always follow, your gut and your heart. The brain will follow. So
I love that. I love that. And honestly, I don't, want to make a stark transition here, but like, I think like on the podcast too, I think it's easy. Like we're putting this out there, we want to be politically correct and all these different things, but like, I want to speak my truth, right? Like I think sometimes it's easy to sugarcoat stuff or not say what you really feel, like, especially in the political landscape and environment that we're in right now. And, I just think that it sucks because you don't feel empowered or good at the end of the day when you have to kind of keep, your mouth shut.
Reserve yourself.
There's something to be said. I mean, you don't need to always be the one speaking up or cause issues with somebody or fight with somebody because of the bumper sticker at the gas station. Like there's a time and a place for it. But I think that when confronted or when putting yourself out there, I think that honesty kind of radiates through. And that's kind of, I think when we start being more honest and speaking our truth on here is when things will really catch like wildfire.
I want to build on that, Don, because, I'd say I side Republican policy, but I was never a Trumper. I never was. And, frankly, he's grown on me over just comparing the two fucking guys right now.
And then obviously,
it's just a rock and a hard place between those fucking guys. But, I noticed too, if there's triggering comments and stuff like that, back in 2016, I was going to be the first one in that thread to say, no, check this or think about this. Like these types of interactions, to your point, better left unsaid. You're not going to change minds. You can have your own opinion, certainly, and take action on that opinion through the voting booths, through your platforms. But at the same time, really picking and choosing your battles is a good way to go about things nowadays. But you also want to be true to yourself when you do have to speak up and you do have to battle. So getting into the Trump thing, fucking nuts.
Somebody tried to kill him, dude.
Somebody tried to kill Trump. All right. If you're living under a rock, there was an assassination attempt on the former president. He had crawled up onto it was a building 500 yards away from the podium where Trump was.
No, it wasn't even 500. Sorry to cut you off. It wasn't even 500 yards. And I guess anyone who shoots.
It was an easy shot.
And that goes
400 feet. Like we're talking like 150 yards. Like
this goes to the misinformation too. By the way, you're gonna listen and see a bajillion different media outlets spin it their own way. It behoove everybody to do their own research. But the guy took a sniper shot or multiple at the crowd and at Trump, and a bullet had grazed his ear. Right. Trump went down. Secret Service came in and Secret Service sniper was able to take the guy out. So there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of sources that say that the sniper was seen prior to the bullets being shot. And why didn't the Secret Service do stuff about it? There's conspiracy theories that Trump maybe had a razor, cut his ear. He didn't even have a cut on it when he went golfing the next day. I don't care who you are. The optics are, and from what I'm seeing in all my research, there was a true assassination attempt. And, thankfully he's alive. Nobody should be targeted. Any political violence in any sort is condemnable, and it shouldn't happen. But
and the loss of life is tragic. I mean,
somebody died too.
Yeah,
somebody died. Yeah, and somebody got hurt, which
a pretty standout person from my understanding of it. Like he leaves behind 2 children and a wife. I think he was a fire chief. And
it's really tragic, and the fact that somebody had to be hurt in that situation is awful. And I've been doing a lot of research on this, and who knows, right? I only know what I know, and the information I get is the information that I get, but there's a lot of layers to this. Okay. Like Jeff was saying, it's a very close shot. This kid, right? People see him. I saw videos, like legit videos of him crawling on the roof, and there's people like 3 or 4 minutes before the shot saying, hey, there's somebody up there. Right. Yeah. So the story that it's out now on the news, like this is all public information, is that a cop actually ended up going up the ladder at one point, because there's a ladder that led up to the roof. He went up there, confronted the guy turned the gun at him or something like that, or so the cop got down because he didn't want to get shot, and then right after that he started firing shots because he knew he was somebody was onto him. Second speculation, which is crazy, is that how quickly they shot him after, is that there's videos of the snipers already had him in the scopes probably 30-40 seconds beforehand. This was botched by the Secret Service so bad it's not even funny. I mean,
certainly, from a security standpoint,
it's pathetic. I mean, it's hard to think that the Secret Service could actually, and this is where the tinfoil hats are going to come on. It's hard to think that professional of a operation could botch something that bad and leave a vantage point open, and then for somebody to be up there for 3 or 4 minutes beforehand, even though the minute there was any type of threat, they shouldn't even have let him onto the stage, because that's the X, right? That's the target. And that's the most important person, why they're all there to protect. And they even let him on the stage and he started talking. I mean, I just think the whole thing is absolutely, utterly ridiculous. And then the last thing I'm going to say is what I found out through information that I got just from, regular media, is that this kid, 20-year-old kid, no social media, no nothing, right? He actually was in a commercial for BlackRock. Okay. It literally, like, in a commercial for BlackRock, and they took it down, and people have like photos and stuff of it. And like I said, that's the information that I'm getting. Could be a hoax, but to find a kid that age that doesn't have any social media, who was into that kind of stuff, it's really, really crazy to think that kid just arbitrarily did that and then found the perfect vantage point between whatever had happened there and pulled that shot. So my head's spinning. That's the information I have. I wanted to put it out there. What are your guys' thoughts?
Holy, I mean, the BlackRock bit for me is just like, what the fuck is going on up there? Like, what if I was going to have somebody try to assassinate somebody, put my tinfoil hat on, right? A 20-year-old Republican sign up to shoot the president is probably a good, person to pull aside and say, hey, we'll give you a couple bucks, or whatever the incentive was.
No, well, listen, so and Jeff might be able to speak to this better.
I would think if I were going to be, hypothetical here, I think
hypothetical
be something more than money. I would have to think to sign someone up for that kind of shit.
Almost some type of blackmail, almost.
Oh yeah,
maybe family related.
Maybe it's an and thing and money. I don't know, but Yeah, I mean, if you were going to go down the line of this person was put up to this by someone else or a group, it would have to be something very significant, I would imagine, to make someone go through that.
I think so. What I think, and Rob actually said this, but to put the tinfoil hat on, maybe I shouldn't blow his spot up, but whatever, we can edit it. He was obviously in the Marines as well, and has some intel on this and, some experience as you do, Jeff. And he was like, I almost guarantee that either they found like kiddie porn on the kid's computer or they put it on there. And they came to him, the Secret Service, FBI or whatever, and said, listen, you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life or you're going to do this for us. And, we'll get you away with it. But like you said, Rudy, some type of significant blackmail is probably at play if, of course, he was put up to it and then it just arbitrarily do this. But I mean, the cops could have went up there. He could have been ambushed. He could have been picked off at any second. I mean, the fact that the kid just went up on that roof that should have been a secured area, just in the middle of broad daylight with an assault rifle and set up shop that close. I mean, it's just very.
Dude, if he was like 500 yards away or more, I can like maybe understand, but the fucking with 200 yards is just mind blowing.
When you obviously were in the military, so how like if that cop didn't happen or like there wasn't so much going on or like literally
I was in the fucking Marine Infantry Reserves. I was not in the Secret Service, so this is where I can't fathom what I would expect.
Yeah.
Well, even when they were running up, right? You can hear the audio of I think it was a woman Secret Service agent saying, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" Like there should be a plan, right? If there's shots fired, get him down, get him off. He was on the stage way too fucking long. One, he fucking after the shots were fired. How did they know that the threat was taken care of? There could have been.
I think they had radio chatter where they
said the target's down, but then you don't know if there's multiple shooters. Like, and then you go into the personnel and like the women and stuff involved. Like, not that there isn't capable women. I'm sure there's plenty of capable women that Jeff was in the military with, but the people who are supposed to surround him, there's not supposed to be an inch of him show. They're supposed to carry him off stage. They let him stop. They weren't even as tall as him. They weren't covering his body. And then obviously he stands up and goes fight. There's that iconic picture, and it's unbelievable, really. The fact that, that, like, that's actually a photo, like,
what a shot.
Sent chills down everyone's spine. Everyone's like, wow, like, even if you don't like that guy, it's hard not to respect him after that, right? So it was just, the whole thing was just so botched, though, from beginning to end. I don't know, like you said, how they let him be on stage, how they let him get back up. I mean, they should have had him, like look, a plank into the car, like, within, within a matter of seconds. The whole thing just is very, very suspicious. And I just really hope that in the information age, we get some real decent information on this, because I think people deserve to know, man. And this is a big deal. I mean, this was somebody who, was the president, and regardless of who it was, if it was the president now, Biden, or it was him, and somebody who has a really good chance, especially now, of becoming the next president. I mean, it's just, we deserve some answers, man. People just can't be in the dark anymore about this kind of stuff, man. And everyone's very well aware of the media lying to us constantly. And, I feel like even news media outlets are starting to realize that and, starting to report on things a little bit more honestly, it seems. And I'm hoping that this is a shift in the right direction, and opposed to pulling us apart, some divine intervention of this bullet not hitting him could actually bring people closer together, kind of like what happened after 9/11, before we got dragged into, a war. But
and that's a great point. That reminds me of what you said about, when you're talking about not arguing with every person who you disagree with their bumper sticker, maybe at a gas pump. And it's, I think socially we've come quite, I don't know, we've degraded, I would say. Certainly a pandemic naturally, I think, produced an environment for that. But I think it probably even started a little bit before that. And, just being able to have conversations with people that aren't around divisive things. Or if you discover that there's a divisive thing, like, still be willing to connect with people on the vast majority of things that you share in common than the few things that maybe you disagree on.
Absolutely. And we're at the end of the day, when we have conversations with people, and I go back to when I was, talking to people in their homes, when I was selling roofs or whatever, we're all humans, man. Like we're the same 99% of the time. And like and a lot of this political crap has just been, propagated by the media and stuff like that to make us, because we could go down a real rabbit hole, which I'm happy to do, but like the fact that we're paying, 30, 40% in taxes is fucking insane, right? I mean, we should all be like, the government's botched. They do an awful job. A lot of the systems that are in place aren't even ran that well. And why the hell are we paying into something where we have no control over where any of the money goes? And we're not really benefiting, like veterans, like yourself, and people aren't benefiting from all this tax money that we have. And then there's no accountability to the tax money. And Rudy, my whole thing, and I've only heard one politician, I think it was that Ramaswamy guy, mention this. Every government transaction that they use our tax dollars, whether it's municipal or government, all those should be on the blockchain.
Yes.
We should have insight. And then as people who are pretty smart in AI technology, we would find a way, because people are pretty smart, to go through that ledger and find where the holes are. There should be complete and 100%. In today's day and age, though, Rudy, there's no reason why we can't have 100% transparency where, like, at least maybe there's some Secret Service stuff or whatever, which we can talk about just getting rid of some of those things. I mean, everyone knows the CIA killed the JFK.
You might have a private security force based on what happened.
Oh yeah, well he's gonna have private security from now on. You know what I mean? I mean, how could you not after that? But and I don't think this is going to be the last. I think that there's going to be multiple attempts. Honestly, it's a really
yeah. I don't know how the next 4 months will shape up and leading up to the election. You've heard it from me before. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a viable option, in my opinion. All right. Biden doesn't.
We got to open it up.
Biden appears weak. He may have experience. His experience is moot to me. It has no bearing on how well he can lead the country. And in my opinion, Democrats are fucking idiots at this point for continuing to allow him, or I don't want to put it all in the group, but whoever has a say in that, congressional members, Senate members that are still behind him, they should have made a change a long time ago.
Well, I think it's a strategy. I don't know if I would even believe everyone that supports him that they really think he's the best person for the job. I just think it's a strategy because they see the alternative is a losing strategy.
Well, that's the problem, right? That's the rock and the hard place that we find ourselves in, this two-party system.
Right.
People aren't opening up to the fact that we really have an opportunity here to start to dissolve that.
Demand it at least. I mean, if we demand things, it does happen in this country. Thankfully, we have some course of reaction as a society, but we do have to exercise it, and often you have to apply pressure in some way, shape, or form.
I was going to just say, Don, and hopefully you don't forget. So I was reading Ray Dalio's Changing of the World Order, and there is generally 60 to 80 year spans between world order setups. All right. Last one was after World War II, right? So we're coming up to the 80-year marker. And it's going to be extremely interesting as to how the world shapes up, because there are allied forces that are not going to have our back when Trump gets into office, because in all likelihood, he will. He's seen as a hero, and he shouldn't have gotten an attempt on his life, but he did. And this is where we find ourselves. So he's leading in the polls, and
I think he has a better chance now than he ever did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's over. It's going to be a landslide. So with that, like, how's the world going to look, right? And to your point, Don, blockchain is a huge way to give us some transparency, give the normal people at home, the citizens of the United States of America, some transparency as to what the fuck is going on and who's getting what. And I don't know who's going to push it. Trump says he's a proponent of crypto. I love that. So does Robert F. Kennedy. Which is amazing, right? I mean,
yeah.
Jeff said it. Oh, sorry. Were you done?
No, I'm all set.
I don't want to. Are you sure?
Yes.
I don't want to. Well, no,
it's
Jeff said
topic.
it perfectly. Well, Jeff said it perfectly. We need to apply pressure to the government and demand change. But we can't do that when we're split down the middle. And there's obviously some machine. We kind of know what?
It's like a divide and conquer type
exactly.
of.
Exactly. They have complete control over us when we're divided basically 50-50 as a country. If we're all pretty much on the same page and behind the same person, we're going to be like, yeah, listen, like we voted you in. This is what we demand. We want lower taxes. We want this on the blockchain. And luckily, I think we still actually live in a country where that's possible. But there is no way that with the division that they put into place, we're able to come together and demand change because everyone's so at each other's throats for no freaking reason. When, like, going back to what we said earlier, we're pretty much all the same and we're all getting absolutely freaking fucked on taxes and stuff like that. I was thinking about it the other day. Like, I try to help my mom out and stuff, right? Like, I had an exorbitant amount of money taken from me in taxes last year, right? You know what I mean? I don't make like a shitload of money or anything like that, but you got to think, well over $20,000 in taxes, right? If I didn't pay taxes, let's just say, I know that's a little radical of a thought, I could literally have an apartment or a house for my mom for the entire year. I could pay for her car payment. I could get groceries for her and then actually help my grandfather out and like other people in my family. People used to be community. They used to have a church and a community and they would take care of each other. If I was making the money that I actually make on paper, I would be much better situated to take care of my family, And I just think that like even localizing government more and putting more power and like strategy into the municipalities, then you wouldn't have to move to Florida. If you didn't like the policy in Massachusetts, you could just move over a few towns and then you could actually vote the people in and actually meet those people. But like I said, a lot of this stuff's just too utopian, right? Like we are where we are. And I think the changes that need to happen, I mean, they're not going to happen overnight, but they're never going to happen if we don't get all on the same page. So for me, it's crazy.
To your point.
In the meantime that we're getting on the same page, I think, pushing for opening up ballot access for third parties, is really important because once you get a third viable party that's being, put up there on the debate stage and is getting similar airtime and all this, attention and appropriate attention to like allow the discourse to be more than just a binary situation. We'll open the door for a fourth, fifth, sixth party, which would then give us a more diverse, well-representative, democracy, a representative democracy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And it's just even what they've tried to do to pinch out RFK, because I like RFK too. You know what I mean? He's obviously part of a political family, but one that's been literally his father and uncle were both assassinated by the government. You know what I mean? Like we know this to pretty much be true now. And we're still sitting here giving our money, like, you know what I mean? 30-40% of our money to this government that we can't trust as far as we can throw. So there needs to be a serious breakdown of the government. And I hope that, if, either one of these guys get into office, they actually follow through with some of that stuff because it needs to happen and it's not going to happen overnight. And that's what's tough.
I just want to take this time to dig on Kyle a little bit because if that motherfucker was here, he would have great insight as to a bigger Freemason, whatever the fuck it is, who's running the world type deal.
He could really go to.
He would go to town on it, and it's unfortunate that he's not here. But at the same time, too, these are the considerations that we are dealing with, and as much as we don't want them to impact us, they are what they are, and they do impact us in our bottom line. To your earlier point, Ryan, the flow of cash, whether it be taxes or a subscription to Hulu or a subscription to Netflix or a subscription, whoever the fuck pays CNN ads, cut it off, cut off all that flow of money. And that's when you see changing of power, I think.
Well, yeah, super funds should be illegal. It's it's the same as a monopoly. Like BlackRock is a monopoly, but we allow it to exist. But the government's suing Ticketmaster because they have a monopoly, which I agree with, by the way. So the people who are in people's pockets aren't being cut off at the knees, but if that's the reason for big government. If you're going to have a big government, you need to stop those type of things and the super funds and they're the ones obviously who are calling all the shots because they're behind these candidates and they just pinch everybody else out. And that's why it's that way, because it's easier to manipulate, right? Because if it's a two-party system, it's way easier for the powers to be to manipulate it. Excuse me.
Right. And on that note, as an effective way, I think, to at least mitigate the damage of a system that's easily corrupted and manipulated is adding more representation, more representatives, making it, besides just two parties, also having more representatives. They don't all necessarily need a living wage necessarily from their positions, but that just produces a system that I think is more insulated from corruption from outside sources, because then they have to corrupt 3, 4, 5 times as many people.
Yeah. That's a democratic way, right? We're all different. Get more people on the freaking stage, right? Like there's plenty of the country right now that is not full up Trump and is definitely not full up Biden, and we just have no representation to that extent. But I was going to say, there's this book called The 48 Laws of Power, and to your point again, Don, one of the rules of power is to be truthful on occasion. And if somebody knows you to be a liar and you say a truth once in a while, people start to listen to you a little bit more. And if they don't listen to you, they could chalk it up to you being a liar, but at the same time, they're going to get fucked because you're telling the truth in one such instance. I think the media perpetuates that to the fullest extent, and they'll sell you a little bit on the side, or they'll tell you the truth all the time, and then they'll lie, and you'll think they're being truthful at that point. And that's how these people sort of corral and manipulate the public through their messaging. It's fucked, guys. It's crazy stuff.
Well, you mentioned Ray Dalio, right? He's the one that says that, like, he predicts he said that the chances of World War III are over 50%. That's the same guy, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's been making that prediction, and it's perverse incentives, because the politicians, like Jeff made a good point, it's their full-time job. They should have other jobs. Like, they're not regular members of society. They're getting money from these different channels, and they're incentivized to lie and just keep the big show going. There's no real incentives in place for politicians to do the right thing.
Right.
But if there were incentives for them to actually tell the truth and things were structured a little bit differently, and honestly, I wish I had better, insight or a plan for that. I don't, but I think that there's a lot of smart people out there. And I think that one good thing about this information age and all the information out there is that we, as a society, kind of know that there's something wrong and some serious change needs to happen. And I think by, follow the money, right? By getting the money under control, and then to start to take out some of these organizations that we maybe don't need, like the CIA and stuff like that has way too much power, see what's going on with the Federal Reserve. Because if we don't make some serious changes, there is going to be a World War III, and it's going to collapse our entire economy. And just like Rome, people keep making that assumption about the United States, we're on that same trajectory of a path of self-implosion, where we're imploding in on ourselves. There's the radical policies, the crazy ideologies that are getting, propagated all over the place. And now, this is an inflection point in our country, and we're heading right towards a war and right towards Rome if some serious changes don't happen. And I think that it's not only up to these, people in power, it's up to every single one of us to say our truths, going back to what you said, getting on a podcast, getting at the dinner table, and just not being afraid to say it, because the cancel culture really sucked the wind out of a lot of people. And I think that that's kind of reversing. And what happened the other day was, and rest in peace to the firefighter who had passed away, and, prayers go out to his family, and it sucks that he had to take that sacrifice, but I really hope that this can be a swing away from cancel culture, away from this crazy political landscape, and get people on the same page so we can make some change and apply pressure where it needs to be applied, so we don't go down that path of war and, what Rome went through, because it's right around the corner, guys, and it's fucking scary.
Yeah, it really is. And what's worse, and for, Jeff and I, it's not really, our retirement may be impacted, But what will really be impacted is our children's lives and what they're going to have to deal with and how they're going to have to navigate what the hell's coming up here. From a policy standpoint, to your point, Jeff, yes, we need legislation that enables whoever the hell needs to be on the ballot, put some wickets on there. But if they meet the wickets, get them on the ballot. All right. We need term limits in the Senate. We need term limits in the Senate. And we also need, I like the Republican initiative to eliminate stock options or stock playing if you're a congressional member or a Senate member.
Right, you got to put in some other blind trust.
Yeah, and then the lobbying. There needs to be a big regulation surrounding that. When you get elected, you're there to represent your district. You're there to represent your state. You're not going to fucking get extra rich doing it. You're going to work for us, and that's how it should be. That's why you're there. And frankly, the districts and the states that continue to elect the people that perpetuate the problem, you got to wake up a little bit. All right. They're not working for you. All right. So that's my take from a policy standpoint. The changing of the world order is upon us. I don't want to be grim or anything, but I want to be realistic because it's a crazy time out there, and we have a lot of scary weapons, and we're all going to be impacted if we do go to war.
In BRICS is already in existence, currency, right? That already exists, where these super nations who have exceeded us in architecture and cities and in a lot of innovation, like India, are part of this organization where, if the currency changes away from the, American dollar, I mean, we're in serious trouble. So, I mean, there's a lot of things have to happen, and they have to happen pretty quickly in order for, some serious change not to happen. So it's going to be very interesting kind of documenting things as we move forward. But, like I said, I really hope that this is an inflection point, and it's a time for people to come together and apply the pressure where needed to make these changes and actually get out and vote the right people in. Because, like you said, Rudy, a lot of people don't think about it, but it starts on a municipal level. And just by allowing the same people to get in there, that, having the term limits so they don't continue to stay there forever and do the same stupid stuff, right? Definition of insanity.
Seriously.
Just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And hopefully this plugs people in, and it's a step in the right direction, because it could get really grim really fast. And not to be negative, but it's definitely scary to think about what could happen. And it wasn't that long ago where some of our ancestors were in war. I mean, it's not an uncommon thing, and it's definitely something that's a very strong possibility, like that Ray Dalio guy says. Yeah, and Jeff, did you have any thoughts on that? Because I was gonna switch it to some blocks.
Something that came to mind was ultimately like quick to action, certainly, and I absolutely believe that the way to create the biggest impact to your community is to work within your community. So, unfortunately, a lot of times when we see travesties, across even a different region of our own country, let alone across the world, we have limited ability to impact that situation. Not saying we should never be involved, but we have to also admit, that we have limited ability to have impact outside of our immediate community. And so acting fast as individuals, but ultimately I would like to see the larger government in a distant place, their reach being rolled back, and that they actually move at a slower pace, because often, even with their best intentions, their policies and their legislation ends up creating a lot of unintended, or maybe even intended, who knows, consequences.
There's numerous examples over history too, right? Afghanistan,
shows that
Ukraine could potentially be one of them. Where they We've sent all this money and we've sent all these troops to prevent war, which continues. And or not, we haven't sent troops yet, but we've sent tools, right?
There's troops over there. There's definitely troops over there.
Yeah. At least in the NATO nations.
But they're staged. They're there.
Sure. So, if history tells us anything, it's a waste, and it's unfortunate. But I was gonna just switch it up, guys. All right, because we got to bring it back to the blocks. And I was gonna say, I'm still grateful to be an American. I'm still grateful to be here. I'm still grateful that I can have the freedoms that I have, and the opportunities that I have here. It's a tough time in the world right now, but at the same time, it could be worse, and we could be much worse off. But to circle another block, you got to consider your outside factors and take the actions, to your point, Jeff, when you realize you need to take action, and do the best of your ability to see it through. So is there anything else that we want to sort of touch on?
I love what you said. I think that, we are, since I started recording, we're about an hour and 20 minutes too. So we probably don't want to have too much editing. But I think that you bringing the blocks back up and what we're up to in the world here, I thought was beautiful. And we could even end with what you just said. But to layer on that and what you and Jeff said is that you really have to focus on yourself in the blocks and putting yourself out there and getting better as a person and getting that self-awareness up, which I would like to believe I have a little bit, to move forward in the world is very important. And to take the time to consider the community around you. Because Jeff also made a great point, as you had mentioned as well, Rudy. We have to take care of ourselves first, get better, get more self-aware, get ourselves to a certain point. At that point, we can start taking care of our family. At that point, when we start having our family taken care of, we can start doing actual things on the ground in our own communities where we have control over the outcome. And if everyone's doing that at an individual level, then we can make some serious changes. But for me to try to solve whatever issues going on, or the CIA or whatever, it's just not possible. It's not feasible. And, I really try to start with myself and being more self-aware and hoping that we're inspiring people to do the same. And, what Jeff said really motivated me. I've been wanting to get involved, and I'm part of like the Hibernians. It's like a Irish club similar to like the PFW or the Knights of Columbus or whatever. And, they have charity that they do locally, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I haven't gone back down there and re-signed up for my membership, but it's something that I think those guys are all older. Most of them are older gentlemen. There's a lot that I could learn from them. It is a religious organization, and they do a lot of charity work that I would like to get involved in. And I think that that's what I'm saying right now is that I'm going to try to do is I'm going to get down there, pay my dues, and try to get involved in the community work that they're doing, because instead of talking about it, that's what I'm going to try to do something on my local level to start making change. And I think that if everyone starts making those steps to the best of their ability, starting with themselves, we could hopefully turn this ship around.
Amen.
Well said. Yeah. Sounds like commitment. What remind me of the blocks again?
It's going to be vulnerability. It's going to be trust and honesty, consideration, work ethic, and gratitude.
Yeah. And I think we've touched on all those in this conversation. Trust and honesty is certainly, I think it starts with yourself. You have to have some trust in yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself if you're going to go forth and do much of anything outside of that.
Yeah. And you'd hope others hold themselves to that principle. But at the same time, guys, we can't do much about others, right? We have to do it with ourselves.
You do not control. We don't control others. So there's really nothing you can do. And that's hard, especially as a parent, because even in that child-parent relationship, as much as you're responsible, you learn pretty quickly. You don't control necessarily the other person at all. Or at least that's where I definitely came very familiar with that aspect.
I'm with you, man. That my little guy is he's he's a little whippersnapper. Okay.
He's got a mind of his own, man. Yeah, you can't make people do stuff, you know. It's funny.
Rudy, we just talked about our experience growing up and how we had some wild times. So I won't be surprised if we have some stories as parents to tell in the future.
Oh, I hope he's nothing like me in that regard. But with any luck, he'll have a long and fruitful and successful life. And all I can do is be the best example as possible. And
right,
you know, and that's why we're here. That's why we're building block by block.
Y'all are good role models for yourselves and outside of that. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, guys. Well, that was episode 9 with our good buddy Jeffrey Burrows. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you listened in, continue building block by block.
Zulu, ciao.
Peace.
Blockhead, yes, I